broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well. Broadcasting live from the Blue Ridge Mountains, and to put a nice little, a nice little bow on that. Sorry for the delay. Obviously, for those listening recorded, you don't know that, but there was a bear outside the window that the dog was just going nuts over. So yeah, just things you have to worry about when you do this. Didn't have to do that in studio, but now we do. So everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's show, because today's show, you might have guessed it, Ralph Bond joins us every single Friday to talk about 4 amazing stories that you probably haven't heard about. And these are really cool. You should check them out. But you can check them out at computeramerica.com. You can check out the show notes, which will have the source for every little thing. Or if you're hearing this, you can just sit back and relax and listen. You can watch us on YouTube, all of the podcast sites, and you can just hear what Ralph brings us. And it's all medical nudes. And this is all, traditionally it's just been one story, but it looks like today we are doing everything medical. And that means, hey, some of the coolest innovations. Yes, there's plenty of innovations in energy, in transportation, in computers, and all that kind of thing. But medical is where I think new technology, as Ralph has demonstrated time and time again, it really shines. It's a direct impact on people with the greatest need. So yeah, we'll get into more of that. How it works, what it is that we're doing here. But everyone, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, contest giveaways, social media links, all that and more, and of course, the show notes. So, with that being said, let's bring Ralph on and just have fun with it. Once again, science and tech trends correspondent. And Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How have you been?
Back, and boy, another crazy week of news, and boy, the world needs what we're going to deliver today, and that's positive, uplifting news. And as Ben was saying, folks, it's going to be all medical news, technology news today. But for first-time listeners or viewers, welcome. And I want to tell you what Ben and I do every Friday. We look at 4 articles that show us key trends and developments in all things science and technology, including nearly every single story has artificial intelligence, almost every one. But we look at things in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, agricultural tech, construction tech, space research, physics, on and on. But most important of all, this is key, folks, we're going to give you hope for a better future, thanks to amazing breakthroughs happening every single day in the world of science and technology.
Absolutely. And hey, we're just going to start off, as I said before, all medical news. So we're going to go with story number 1. And this is a part that I think a lot of people are, myself included, I didn't know this. Like if you get something damaged, a broken nose, if, your ear gets torn, something like that happens, cartilage, and of course you can imagine cartilage in your knees and your joints and so on and so forth. That's kind of like a one-time thing. You get what you got, and if it tears, breaks, rips, whatever, there's a little bit of healing that can happen, but by and large, cartilage is a very important, non-renewable resource in our own bodies. And story number 1 maybe tackles that a little bit.
Yeah, it sure does. And by the way, come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes. In the show notes, we give the highlights, the points that I'm going to walk you through, and Ben and I are going to discuss, but I've also inserted, coded with blue text, additional information to fill in gaps where the authors of these articles and these scientific publications assume you know what they're talking about. And I insert little helpful tutorials in that. But with that said, let's get on to our first story here. It comes from 3dprinting.com. Headline: researchers developed 3D printed lab-grown ear cartilage. Okay, that's interesting. Here we go. Researchers, and it's 3 institutions in Switzerland led by ETH Zurich. At what they've done, they've successfully 3D printed lab-grown human ear cartilage that stays stable and elastic in animal models for at least 6 weeks. Time out. This is early research. At this stage, they've achieved this ability to create a lab-grown ear replacement. In this case, it's only lasting about 6 weeks in the test animals, but it's the beginning of a trend that may lead to a complete solution that would endure for a person's lifetime. So that's something I want to stress.
And just seeing the image here, if you can see the video portion, and just seeing essentially someone's ear just in a little slide. That's kind of creepy, but at the same time, really cool.
It is very cool. And Bioink and 3D printing in biology and lab-grown organs and all this sort of stuff is a monstrous trend that Ben and I have been talking about for years. So this breakthrough brings medicine closer to creating custom, patient-specific ear replacements. That's another key trend in medical technology. Patient-specific organs, patient-specific solutions, treatments, drugs, and you name it. Patient-specific is the key these days. But one key challenge remains: maturing elastin, the protein responsible for the natural ear's flexibility. And what the researchers achieved, they produced elastic ear cartilage using human cartilage cells expanded in the lab. They 3D printed the cells in a bioink to form ear-shaped structures. And after several weeks of maturation, the tissue developed type 2 collagen, a major component of natural cartilage, and mechanical properties similar to the real ear. What they mean by mechanical properties is, it flexes and just like your ear. And when implanted in animal models, test animals, the cartilage kept its shape and elasticity for 6 weeks, as we mentioned before. And then why does this matter? Well, one thing I was reminded of is a terrible affliction that some 4 out of 10,000 children suffer from, something called microtia. That's MICROTIA. It's a congenital ear malformation. And in the show notes, I inserted a picture of what this can look like. And it's just, boy, some of it's very severe, where there's basically no ear at all the way through misshapen ears. So it's a very tragic thing. Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, the mechanical properties of an ear are also just generally how an ear is shaped and how that affects, how you hear. Yeah. And, I'm sure, just looking at these pictures of all these, all these ears that are malformed or in some cases not ever formed. Right. Yeah, that could solve, I guess, hearing loss at this point.
Yeah, that's also part of it too. So there's a real motivation here beyond cosmetics, or maybe someone gets an injury and you're just going to replace there's a treatment here in the works for these children or people that suffer from this congenital ear malformation. It's really very serious.
Almost like the sign of the times, Ralph. Like, I will admit, my immediate reaction was, oh, good. Now celebrities are going to be able to pick. It's like, I think I want some Marilyn Monroe ears. They're going to be able to pick their favorite celebrities' ears. But no, more of a medical need makes sense.
That's why I think it's really important. And I think that's the key motivation of these researchers, which is to their credit. So let's talk about when you have this malformation, what current treatment requires harvesting rib cartilage, which is painful, leaves scars, and produces replacement ears that are often too stiff. So they've been trying to figure this out for a while, but using that kind of brutal technology. So lab-grown cartilage could offer customized, less invasive, and more natural feeling ear reconstruction. And how they did it, how these researchers did this, well, they optimized 4 critical factors. 1, cell proliferation, growing millions of cartilage cells from tiny biopsies. Material properties, well, they tuning the bioink for structure and support. Cell density, ensuring enough cells to form robust cartilage. And maturation environment, controlling incubator conditions to promote collagen formation. A lot going on in here.
For sure. And it makes sense. And Ralph, we're talking about ears and cartilage and that for now, but it is not a big leap, which I'm sure they'll probably get into later in the article. But it's not a big leap to think, okay, ears are cool, but also what else is cartilage? Knee joints, hip joints, hip replacements, things that are all noses as well. There's so many different things that, like, as people age, cartilage is just such an important part of just, mobility and quality of life that this is very important research. Even if you're like, oh, it's just ears, who cares? No, it's, this could be expanded to so many different parts of the body.
Yeah, and the next part we're going to get into is an example of how the stories we do, often not always, are early research, and the researchers in their research papers or in these articles will tell you, we've achieved this so far. Now we know there's remaining challenges, and that's where the article gets really good. The remaining challenges include the engineered cartilage still lacks fully matured elastin, the protein that gives natural ears their springiness and flexibility. So there's they're not saying they've fully conquered this, but they're on their way. And the other thing they've said here is scientists haven't yet identified how to reliably form stable elastin networks in lab-grown tissue. And the team expects, now this is a great example of, this is early, where are we going? The team thinks it's going to take 5 years more work and research to solve this, after which they can move toward clinical trials and regulatory approval. So, wow, you're getting a real sneak peek on this technology here.
Yeah, and really what was highlighted, for you doing the points, was they're harvesting rib cartilage to then make ear replacements. Ralph, but like they said, that was stiff and inflexible and led to that thing. It seems like we're already almost at that level, but obviously they want to get to a level that it is a fully functioning, truly a replacement for the ear. So they're going to keep refining it. But Ralph, it sounds like they're already kind of at current levels of technology. So very interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
And from Switzerland, which, part of me is like, Switzerland, I don't think of them as a research hotbed, but really Zurich, ETH Zurich.
Very important.
Yeah, has been huge in the research field, as we've seen over, the past couple of years. So very cool. And again, the images really sell it, just seeing the ear that they've created in the lab. Very, very cool. So story number 1, story number 2, we're going to go ahead and jump down. And this one, we're going with prosthesis, which, just last week we covered about artificial skin and some breakthroughs, some early research where they're looking to get that for prosthesis. But in the meantime, Ralph, people need to walk, people need to move, people need to grab things. And, prosthesis today is light years where it was even in the 90s and early 2000s. And story number 2 could be, just further developing what we have today. And it could be, much, much sooner that people see the benefits.
Absolutely. And this is another great story that amplifies the positive side of artificial intelligence. Most of the time in the regular mainstream press, it's all the negativity, losing jobs, terrible this, scary that. This is a good uplifting example of artificial intelligence. So this comes from one of my favorite outlets, medicalexpress.com. And the headline here is Novel Prosthetic Design Combines AI and 3D Printing to improve the fit and functionality of, say, an artificial leg inserted into a kneecap area, for example. That's just one example. So a new study from Simon Fraser University, located in Greater Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Salute to our neighbors up above. I live in the Portland, Oregon area. This research shows that AI-guided pressure mapping combined with 3D printed lattice structures can dramatically improve prosthetic socket comfort, absorbing over 1,600% more energy than traditional solid designs. So the socket in the image that comes in the show in the article is helpful because it shows this fellow who has an amputation of his leg, and he's about to put on his artificial leg, and they're talking about the inner area where the stump of the remaining leg would insert. So that's what we're talking about, the technology and research that these folks are working on. So by capturing each wearer's unique pressure distribution, Ben, again and again and again, medical technology, personalized, patient-specific technologies. That's what we're talking about here is a great example. So by capturing each wearer's unique pressure distribution, the system produces lighter, breathable, personalized sockets that may reduce ulcers, pain, and long-term joint complications. Wow.
I never really think about that. Because I guess when I think about prosthesis, I think, okay, so you are you a small, medium, large, and then you have some cushion, some padding that you could probably personalize. But by and large, I guess I always figured, once you kind of get fitted for it, they kind of cut something and that's kind of the end of it. But and again, such a weird way that I've never heard it described, to absorb 1,600% more energy. I was like, what does that really mean? And I'm sure they'll get into a little bit, but
yes,
by being able to absorb the energy, I guess that just means, hey, it's more comfortable. It's stepping is more gentle. Grabbing things is more gentle. I guess it would make a lot of difference. I never knew.
Yeah. In the world of prosthetics, not that many years ago, it was one fake leg fits all, and now we're going dramatically into a new area. So what this research introduces is a fully customizable 3D printed prosthetic socket, that adapts to each user's pressure and force patterns. AI software that converts real-time pressure data into a personalized lattice infill socket design, a silicon liner with embedded origami-based pressure sensors, gotta love that, to map forces during standing, walking, ramp descent, and leaning. Now get this, Ben. How does this work? User wears a pressure mapping liner inside a temporary socket. Sensors capture pressure and force data during everyday movements, walking, climbing stairs, you name it. Artificial intelligence analyzes the data to identify high pressure zones and optimal support regions. Then a 3D printer fabricates a custom lattice socket tailored to the user's biomechanics. Okay. Wow.
A while ago, we had a company on the show that made, it was more for musicians and whatnot, but they made, it would take a mold of a musician's ear, and it was for high-end musicians because, it would take a lot of money. They would take a mold, and then they would take it to, artists who would then sculpt the, kind of the blank for them to be able to cast and make earphones that would go into your ear and just be super comfortable, allow music, allow sound in, allow music to come out. Ralph, like it was a big process, and we talked about price a little bit. It could be anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 depending on what material and how many you wanted and stuff like that, Ralph. But it was like that level of personalization was always a big barrier to really unique and cool things that everyday people just could not get. And obviously, ear inserts for musicians is, kind of different than prosthesis. But Ralph, it really shows that with AI, you can turn something that is very labor intensive, time intensive, and just something that's out of reach for everyday people. And this is still prosthesis, this is still medical technology, and it's still going to be expensive. But I'm thinking, Ralph, if you can take AI and make things more affordable for everyday people, maybe everything can become a little bit more personalized and comfortable to use, and everyone can benefit from this. So very helpful.
Yeah. And to kind of wrap things up with this article, some key findings: massive energy absorption improvements. So when it comes to standing, 1,600% more absorption improvement. When it comes to walking, 1,290% more absorption improvement. And these gains come from the gyroid, Gyroid, lattice infill they created, a repeating 3D structure inspired by natural patterns like honeycomb and bone. And once again, Ben, you and I've talked about this again and again, science looking to nature in part for inspiration for technology. I love this story.
Yeah, no, the more natural you can get it, I'm sure that just benefits everyone. So really amazing stuff. And again, you should go check out the pictures and read the article. There's always a little bit more there. But no, it's, hey, a lot of hope for people out there that, just, it doesn't seem like a lot, but just a little bit more comfort, a little bit more ability to walk, further, to do more everyday activities, just be more normal. And yeah, that's I'm sure they all love that. So there you go. Story number 2. Now let's go ahead and jump on down to story number 3, where we're going to go to, well, liver disease. Ralph, when I think of diseases, there was a blood test a couple of years ago that really scanned for a lot of things at once. And you figure, okay, well, if there's a disease, we can probably detect it. And, hopefully we detect it in time, that kind of thing. But new detection techniques actually have been coming out more and more in the past couple of years. And I hate to harp on AI, but yeah, I think AI has a lot to do with just being able to parse tons of data and be able to pick out trends in that data. And that's something that AI is always going to be great at. So story number 3, I think, is another example of that.
Oh, it clearly is. And this comes from another great outlet, ScienceDaily.com. And the headline here is AI blood test finds silent liver disease years before symptoms appear. And this comes from Johns Hopkins Medicine website in part as well. And I've got a link in the show notes, by the way, to the research paper. And that often is the case with all these stories we do. We have the research paper links as well. So researchers at Johns Hopkins have developed an AI-powered blood test that can detect early liver fibrosis and cirrhosis years before symptoms appear by analyzing genome-wide DNA fragmentation patterns in the blood. Wow,
of course,
this is very geeky
DNA
stuff.
fragmentation of patterns in blood. Who doesn't look for that instantly? Of course.
Yeah. And in fact, it reminds me that using or refining and expanding blood tests is a key trend in medical research, and this is a good example. So this fragmentome, Fragmentome, the fragmentome approach doesn't look for mutations. Instead, it reads subtle patterns in how DNA breaks apart, revealing early disease signals that current blood tests often miss. Okay, and what the study found? Well, they found that artificial intelligence plus a liquid biopsy. The test uses machine learning to analyze cell-free DNA fragments circulating in the bloodstream. Folks, do I understand this? No. But it's pretty cool if you just get the idea that they can detect liver disease symptoms years before symptoms actually manifest themselves is a key thing that you should take away from this. Even if you don't understand it like me, I don't get it. Detects early liver disease. It identified early fibrosis, advanced fibrosis, and cirrhosis with high sensitivity well before these symptoms typically appear, as we were alluding to before. And here's the approach. It's a gene-wide approach. Instead of scanning for mutation, it examines fragment size, fragment distribution across the genome, repetitive DNA regions rarely studied in other tests. Wow, pretty amazing.
It sounds like with with AI, they're able to not just see what's there and what is not there, which I guess a lot of blood tests kind of look for, Ralph. It seems like they're looking at just like not exactly the what and what isn't, but like the how is it aligned, how is it broken, how is it fragmented, and that's something that no human is going to go under a microscope and count 40 million fragments. As to the next point, they're not going to go in and count. So this is something that is unique to AI, and that's what we like about AI. Are those really revolutionary only thanks to that technology? AI is good in certain applications, and it's awesome to see what it could do.
Yeah, exactly right. And a point that you and I have raised many times before is AI's ability to look at an enormous amount of data all at once that would take human beings maybe weeks, years, months, whatever to do. So this article now talks about the massive data set that they use to achieve this accomplishment. And so each sample included approximately 40 million DNA fragments, enabling highly detailed pattern recognition thanks to AI. And why this matters? Well, early fibrosis is reversible, but current blood tests often miss it, right? Cirrhosis is detected only in about 50% of the time with standard markers, the standard technology today. 100 million people in the U.S. have liver conditions that raise their risk of cirrhosis and liver cancer, and early detection could allow treatment before permanent damage occurs. And to your point, this is great technology, looking at detecting liver disorders early. But what about beyond that? And the article says beyond liver disease research or detection, researchers also found DNA fragmentation patterns associated with cardiovascular disease, inflammatory disorders, neurodegenerative conditions. And there weren't enough cases to build full classifiers yet, but the signal suggests broad potential for detecting many chronic diseases using the same platform. So another example of how this is early research, but already they're saying it beyond liver detection, liver disorder detection, other areas could benefit from this over time. Wow, great stuff.
Yeah, kind of dealing with this in my personal life, and to find out because my mother got COVID, way back when, thanks to me, it was cool. But yeah, so she got COVID, but it really affected, and I didn't know this. COVID actually has a pretty big effect on the liver, and the liver can actually take quite a hit from being infected with COVID. And it took us, Ralph, it took a couple of years to kind of get the test that we needed and see what effect there was, if any, on that, because it wasn't really widely reported, and it's so many things can go wrong with a big general infection like that you don't look at that. So Ralph, I think having blood tests like this, you can have overarching symptoms that, per your own date, per your own article, only 50% of the time you even hit it with the right test. So to be able to kind of break it down and see it much sooner, because so many things can go wrong along with this, that's going to bring a lot of relief to a lot of people, and hopefully, some proper treatment to fix the problems. So very cool stuff. And once again, just a simple blood test to be able to identify this, not take out a section of your liver and look at it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
This is way better. We like this.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Johns Hopkins, very, very cool. So story number 3, great to see. Story number 4. And this is, once again, going back to, story number 2 was about, kind of making prosthesis more comfortable, more wearable, let people do more in what they have. Well, story number 4 looks like we're going to go a little bit further than that.
Yeah, exactly. And this comes from the Los Angeles Times. And let me explain, this story is a broad brush overview. It's not talking about a specific accomplishment or a specific new discovery, but sort of a broad overview. And that's one of the reasons I liked it and wanted to share it. And also from the Los Angeles Times, it's written for normal human beings, which is another advantage here as well. So the headline of this feature is "The Future of Mobility," subhead, "How Advanced Robotic Prosthetics Are Restoring Touch and Motion." And I love this article because, again, it gives a sweeping overview of what's going on in the research community. This article describes a major leap in bionic prosthetics. New surgical techniques and implanted sensors now allow amputees to control robotic limbs with far greater precision, while also restoring realistic sensations of touch. And believe me, this echoes back on so many of the stories Ben and I have done over the last couple of years. Researchers are effectively reconnecting the nervous system to advanced prosthetic hardware. Wow, connecting your nervous system to, say, for example, a prosthetic arm or leg, creating limbs that feel and behave much more like biological ones. And the key points from this article: rewiring the nervous system for better control. Surgeons are now using advanced procedures such as targeted muscle reinnervation and regenerative peripheral nerve interfaces. This is very geeky stuff. These techniques reroute or regrow nerves so they can send clearer signals to robotic limbs. I still can't believe this hybrid, this being able to link your nervous system to a prosthetic device still just blows my mind. And the result,
No, I was just thinking that is the ultimate kind of test of being able to take the human body and really connect it back up. I can't imagine them, being able to do that anytime soon, but they're working on it.
Yeah, they are definitely working on it. It's very, very interesting and very kind of sci-fi in a way. The result, of course, faster, more intuitive, more natural control of prosthetic arms and hands. And also in parallel with this, and we talked about it in last week's show, restoring the sense of touch. Implanted sensors in the prosthetic hand can can stimulate nerves in the arm. Wow. Users report feeling pressure, texture, and even the direction of movement. Absolutely refers to our story we did last week from the University of Cambridge. This sensory feedback dramatically improves dexterity and reduces the mental effort required to use a prosthetic limb. And how about this? Smarter, more capable robotic limbs. Modern biotic limbs include AI-assisted movement prediction, movement prediction, and of course, in real time. That's awesome. High-resolution force sensors, multi-articulating fingers, adaptive grip control, and these systems can interpret nerve signals in real time and adjust movement accordingly. Holy smokes.
It's always one of those things, Ralph, where, we've heard time and time again, people who are, who have lost sensation in the limb or even just lost the limb in general, obviously the brain is, and we've done articles about this, the brain still sends signals as if it were there, obviously.
Yes.
But then we had an article, I want to say like 6 months ago, where they were training AI models on the brain signals of individual people, and then they were having their prosthesis respond to them as they were training it. So essentially it's, it's still you. It feels more like your arm because you're not having to think in a different way to get it to move. It's learning how you think and then moving in response to how you think. And that makes all the difference for it feeling like your limb versus just a prosthesis.
I know. And as you said before, we're light years where we were even 10 years ago in the world of prosthetics. It's just incredible. So going on here, the clinical trials show transformative results. Patients in trials can perform tasks previously impossible with older prosthetics, such as tying shoes, picking up fragile objects, or manipulating small items. And many describe the experience as feeling like they have their hand back, or you could say my leg back, whatever. Now, remaining challenges. This is one thing that I think the article does so well. It's not saying we're done, that's it, we've achieved this nirvana of prosthetics. No, there's still work to be done. These systems are still expensive and not widely available. And long-term durability of implanted sensors remains under study. That's still a challenge. And last but not least, let's get real. Insurance coverage is inconsistent, slowing adoption. So there are challenges, but wow, real cause for hope.
Yeah, there's always the issue of, well, why would we pay for that when something else is much cheaper and more available? And it's like, well, hey, there's hope in the future, and I think we'll get there. All this technology is getting easier to do and cheaper, and just hey, the curve I think is in the people's favor for getting this kind of technology. So there you go. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have been following along, because again, you can find this at computeramerica.com. If you have been following along in the show notes, well, you can keep on going because there are multiple pages that you can go and find more stories. And these are stories that we just don't have time for. Still great stories. You should know about them. You can find them at the bottom of the show notes. These are the honorable mentions section. And Ralph's going to give you the headlines. So if you want to come out to the website, find them yourselves, and hey, have a bit more fun and before the weekend. And these are all great stories, although not all medical. So a little bit of variety down here. So
yeah.
Ralph, let's do the headlines.
Yeah, it's a good grab bag. We'll have 4 honorable mentions. The first one comes from Daily Mail via MSN.com. Headline: Inside World's First Hydrogen Power Cruise scheduled to set sail this year. So this is about Viking cruise ship that they've created that's hydrogen powered. It's the world's first cruise ship that's hydrogen powered. So that's kind of significant. Check that story out. That's fun. Next one comes from sciencealert.com. This is fun. Life may have started as a sticky goo long before cells even existed. This is for the true geek.
I think anyone who is a parent would know life is just sticky goo. At a certain level, it's all just sticky goo.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Our next one comes from biotechtoday.com. Headline: Bioengineered neuronal circuit board mimics conditions of the human brain. And Ben, we have seen so many stories about chips and chip technology and computer motherboards and other things, all designed to be like our brain, neuronal, to work like our nervous system and the way our brains work and so on. So this is a good example of that. And let's see, our last one for this week comes from Green matters.com. That was a new site for me. Headline, Chinese scientists create organic electric car batteries using plastic in a breakthrough research. Subhead, this alternative battery comes as a breakthrough in battery technology. Not only is it more sustainable, but it's also energy efficient. So battery research, and here they are, the Chinese are looking at plastic. You got to read the story to get the full scoop. It's fascinating.
Yep. Always interested in new battery technology. Because, the future really is just batteries all the way down. So, yes. Ralph, I want to thank you so much for bringing all these stories to us. Everyone out there, I want to thank you for tuning in. Once again, Ralph Bond, our science and tech trends correspondent. And this has been an amazing group of stories, mostly medical. And hey, a great way to head out into the weekend with something that, if nothing else, you can be like, hey, I heard about the story on Computer America. And you have to say the full name, not just a podcast. You have to say Computer America when you tell your friends. So with that being said, all amazing stories, bring it up in casual conversation, and tune back in next Friday, every Friday, to Ralph Bond. So until then, have a great weekend, do something fun, catch you next time. Bye everyone.